Imagine this, you're sitting at your kitchen table and your neighbor barges in, saying, "Hey, your house is a mess. I'm bringing in my guys to clean it up for you. You didn't ask for help. You didn't give permission. Oh, and they're armed." That's not help, that's invasion. This isn't just a thought experiment. This is how Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum sees Donald Trump's latest proposal, to send U.S. troops into Mexico to crack down on drug cartels. Her response, unflinching: sovereignty is not for sale.
Dijo, ¿en qué les podemos ayudar para luchar contra el narcotráfico? Les propongo que entre el ejército de los Estados Unidos a ayudarle. ¿Y saben qué le dije? No, presidente Trump. El territorio es inviolable, la soberanía es inviolable, la soberanía no se vende.
This line has become a rallying cry in Mexico and a diplomatic headache for the United States. In a tense phone call on April 16, 2025, Trump spoke with Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum. According to sources close to the matter, Trump insisted that the only way to win the war on fentanyl was for U.S. Special Forces to be allowed into Mexican territory to take out drug cartels directly. Sheinbaum, who only recently took office as Mexico's first female president, gave a sharp and historic response: no. She didn't just say no, she reminded Trump and the world of a fundamental truth: Mexico is not a U.S. colony. Sovereignty is not for sale, she told him. To understand Trump's proposal, we need to understand fentanyl. This synthetic opioid is 50 times stronger than heroin and has become a leading cause of overdose deaths in the U.S. in 2023 alone. Over 70,000 Americans died from synthetic opioid overdoses, most of it linked to fentanyl. Fentanyl is primarily produced from chemicals shipped from China, but it's processed and trafficked by powerful cartels in Mexico. These cartels then smuggle it across the U.S. Mexico border, using everything from hidden compartments in trucks to human mules to drones. To Trump and many Republican lawmakers, this isn't just a drug issue, it's a national security threat. That's why they've proposed classifying Mexican cartels as foreign terrorist organizations and deploying the U.S. military to take them out. But to Mexico, this approach is both insulting and dangerous. Mexican officials argue that cartel violence is a deeply rooted domestic issue, one tied to poverty, corruption, weak institutions, and a long history of failed U.S. interventions. Allowing U.S. troops into Mexican territory would violate the country's constitution and trigger a political firestorm. President Sheinbaum, like her predecessor Andrés Manuel López Obrador, follows the Estrada Doctrine, a 20th-century principle that champions non-intervention in foreign affairs. Letting in foreign troops would mean betraying this core tenet of Mexican diplomacy. It would also mean accepting blame for a crisis largely fueled by U.S. demand. After all, if Americans weren't buying, the cartels wouldn't be selling. The cartels, a mutating threat. Make no mistake, the cartels are not just drug traffickers, they're parallel powers. Groups like the Sinaloa Cartel and the Jalisco New Generation Cartel, CJNG, have grown into multinational criminal empires. They control entire regions of Mexico, run extortion rackets, carry out mass killings, and even fund political campaigns. In many towns, they are the law. In others, they fight open battles with the Mexican military, armed with U.S.-made rifles bought legally and trafficked south. This makes any foreign intervention a highly volatile gamble. Even U.S. military officials admit it could ignite a war they're not prepared to fight. Trade wars and broken trust. The current tensions between the United States and Mexico are deeply rooted in recent trade disputes. In early 2025, President Donald Trump reinstated a 25% tariff on all steel and aluminum imports, including those from Mexico, eliminating previous exemptions. This decision was justified by the administration as a measure to protect national security and bolster domestic industries. Mexico, a significant exporter of these metals to the U.S., criticized the move. Economy Minister Marcelo Ebrard pointed out that the U.S. actually runs a trade surplus in steel and aluminum with Mexico, making the tariffs unjustified. The Mexican government initiated consultations with U.S. officials, emphasizing the integrated nature of the two countries' economies, especially in sectors like automotive manufacturing, where components often cross borders multiple times during production. The automotive industry, in particular, has felt the impact. Automakers like General Motors and Stellantis have reported significant financial hits due to the tariffs, leading to uncertainties in production and pricing. In response to industry concerns, the Trump administration announced temporary relief measures, including rebates on tariffs for automakers that produce vehicles in the U.S. and comply with the USMCA agreement. Despite these measures, the broader economic relationship between the U.S. and Mexico remains strained. Mexico has considered retaliatory tariffs on U.S. goods but has so far refrained, opting instead for diplomatic engagement. The situation underscores the complexities of international trade and the challenges of balancing domestic economic policies with long-standing trade partnerships. Here's the paradox: the U.S. and Mexico are more economically integrated than ever. They trade over $800 billion in goods and services annually. Millions of jobs in both countries depend on this relationship. Auto parts cross the border 8 times during production. U.S. factories rely on Mexican labor, and Mexican factories rely on U.S. demand. Through the United States-Mexico-Canada Agreement, USMCA, the two nations have committed to a shared economic future. So when relations sour, the ripple effects are massive, from Detroit to Monterrey. Trying to fight a war on one hand while doing business on the other? It's like trying to hug someone while pointing a gun at them. History isn't just about the past, it shapes how nations react in the present. For many Mexicans, U.S. intervention is more than a distant memory. The wounds of 1848, when the U.S. annexed half of Mexico's territory after the Mexican-American War, still linger. More recently, Cold War-era operations, some backed by the CIA, have left a legacy of mistrust. So when, in January 2025, President Donald Trump signed an executive order instructing federal agencies to refer to the Gulf of Mexico as the Gulf of America, it struck a deep nerve. Trump framed the move as part of a broader campaign to restore American greatness. But to many, it felt like another heavy-handed attempt to rewrite shared history. The name Gulf of Mexico has been in use since the 16th century and carries profound cultural and geopolitical meaning, especially for the countries that border it. Mexico's President Claudia Sheinbaum responded with a mix of sarcasm and indignation, suggesting that if the U.S. could rename a major body of water, then Mexico might as well rename the entire continent America Mexicana. Her message was clear: history, identity, and sovereignty aren't up for unilateral rebranding. The controversy extended to digital platforms when Google updated its U.S. maps to reflect the new designation, prompting Sheinbaum to threaten legal action against the tech giant. She argued that Trump's order only applied to U.S. territorial waters, and that applying the name change universally infringed upon Mexico's sovereignty. This episode underscores the escalating tensions between the U.S. and Mexico in 2025, highlighting the challenges of unilateral actions on shared resources and the importance of mutual respect in international relations. To Mexicans, these aren't just slights, they're reminders of a past marked by domination. That's why Sheinbaum's words, "sovereignty is not for sale," hit home. Can the U.S. and Mexico work together? So what's the solution? Both countries agree on one thing: the cartels are a problem. Fentanyl is a killer, but their methods differ. The U.S. wants direct, fast, forceful action. Mexico wants diplomacy, intelligence sharing, and long-term social reform. Sheinbaum has called for a binational strategy that doesn't involve boots on Mexican soil. The irony: the most effective past efforts, like the Mérida Initiative, were built on cooperation, not confrontation. The U.S. and Mexico stand at a crossroads. One path leads to deeper cooperation. The other leads to conflict, resentment, and chaos on both sides of the border. President Sheinbaum's refusal wasn't just about national pride. It was a declaration: Mexico will not be bullied. The U.S. may be a global superpower, but even superpowers must listen when their neighbors speak. If the two countries are serious about solving the crisis, not just scoring political points, then it's time to sit down, listen, and build solutions together. Because this isn't just about borders, it's about lives, and if they don't get it right on both sides, more lives will be lost. If you found this analysis helpful, hit like, share with someone interested in international politics, and subscribe for more deep dives into the stories shaping our world.